Welcome back to the Road to City Hall. This morning, President Obama departed for a week-long trip to Africa. It will be his second trip to the continent since taking office. The president is scheduled to visit Senegal, South Africa, and Tanzania to promote democracy and economic cooperation in the region. Hanging over this much-anticipated trip, of course, are concerns over the health of former South African President Nelson Mandela. The anti-apartheid leader is in critical condition and has been hospitalized since early June. Joining me now in the studio to talk about the president's trip are the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Black Star News, Milton Alamati, and Amina Kanjunju, who is the president and CEO of the Africa America Institute. Thank you both for joining us. Very good to see you.
Thank you so much.
And Amina, let me start with you. You've said that this trip needs to be, as with much of the way Africa is thought about and covered in the United States, a departure from what you call the 3 Ds. Explain that.
Yes, death, disease, despair. That seems to be the narrative that follows Africa. And I'd like to think that this trip with the president, we will move away from those 3 items and really focus on trade and investment, education, really creating opportunities for young people to have jobs. So, and also let's focus on the innovations that are coming out of Africa. I think oftentimes you don't think of Africa as a place of innovation. And I think the president has an opportunity to talk about these innovations, and then of course to bring American businesses to the continent, because in Africa, we need products and services, and products and services will create jobs. That will lead to jobs, and then that will solve some of the issues that we're facing with.
This is largely a trade mission, right? I mean, is he taking a bunch of business people with him?
Yes, he is. But in addition to that, he's actually also carrying forth some of the pledges he made when he went to Ghana, Accra, 2009. And he said, we really have to end the days of the big men in Africa and allow democracy to flourish, create institutions so that we can allow the cream of the crop, young Africans, to emerge into leadership. And in fact, by selecting these 3 countries, he's deliberately reinforcing that. Senegal, South Africa, and in Tanzania. And then, of course, in South Africa, he also plans to address the youth, which is very critical. The youth, as we know, I think in most African countries, the youth come up, I think, more than 40% of African countries are aged under 15, actually. So that's very critical. And then in Tanzania, he's going to meet with business executives. And the First Lady also is going to meet with African women to reinforce the emergence of African female leadership on the continent.
And Amini, when you talked about innovation, there's, in some ways, there are African countries that have sort of leapfrogged a generation when it comes to things like cellular technology, right?
Exactly. Well, Kenya is an excellent example.
I mean, they never had a lot of landlines, so they went straight to digital.
They went straight to digital, and they're just doing incredible things with the cell phone. When you think about in Kenya with programs like M-Pesa, you can send money, you can pay for your children's school fees, you can do a lot with your phone. And again, we're not talking about this when we talk about the narrative of Africa, that innovation is really flourishing, and lots of young people and companies are providing products and services that are helping people's lives get better.
You published an editorial today that says, among other things, that the U.S. is in a competition with China for entry into Africa, and we're not necessarily in first place.
No, China does about $300 billion in trade with Africa. The U.S. is only at $100 billion. But I think that's part of the narrative that the president is trying to change. And I think Amin is completely right. We can't really just rely on the old narrative of conflict and disease in Africa. In fact, 60% of growth last year in African countries was accounted for by the emergence of a middle class and consumers. So American businesses and companies need to wake up, and direct foreign investment is also increasing in African countries.
Is there a role for consumers in all of this? Should we be planning trips over there?
Of course. And of course, one of the big industries that are also emerging is tourism. African countries are realizing that tourism is a big industry, and there have been more tourism trade groups coming here to the United States and meeting with the ATA, which is the American Trade Association for Tourism.
And does the president need to be talking, I mean, if he wants to try and combine these messages, does he need to be bringing a message of sort of a pro-democracy message as well as a pro-business message to African businessmen?
Of course, I mean, democracy is key, but I think the way we may be able to get to democracy is by increasing the amount of people who have enough money in their pocket to send their kids to school, to be able to buy the goods and services that they need. I think it's sometimes very difficult to talk about democracy when people are hungry, when they don't have a future before them. And one of the ways we can solve that is create jobs and businesses so that wealth can be created, and then a really interesting conversation can be had about democracy.
Okay, in our last couple of minutes, let's talk a little bit about Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
The latest we heard is that he's on life support. He hasn't made a public appearance really since 2010. I mean,
No.
this has been sort of a long, slow decline.
Right.
What do you think happens next as far as, I know the president was planning to meet with him.
Yes, I don't think the president's going to have a chance to meet with him. I don't think his condition warrants that. But I think Nelson Mandela is a symbol, really, of not only justice in South Africa, but global justice. And I think he's really done his role. He sacrificed 27 years of his life toward ending apartheid in South Africa. I think the people of South Africa now have to carry the ball forth, carry the torch forth, and stabilize the democracy that he was able to nurture in South Africa.
As the president says, President Obama said we need to get away from this era of big men. This is a big man, though. And,
a good big man.
And where's the next generation of leadership coming from?
You know what, it's coming up already. I think there are a lot of young Africans who are looking 20 years, 30 years from now, and they want to see changes. And they're already building businesses, seeking public office. When I've traveled throughout Africa, I'm seeing an energy and a hopefulness for the future that I haven't seen in a long time. So I think the next 20 to 30 years, we'll see some interesting leadership, and leadership that's really inclusive and positive for the continent.
When you talk to your peers and your colleagues here, the MBAs, and they're all very ambitious. We all know them.
Yes.
They're not going to stop till they get to the executive suite. Should they also be looking at Africa?
Absolutely, absolutely. There are so many things to do in terms of business. There are businesses to start. There are products and services to deliver. They should definitely look at Africa. It's a place where you can make money and make an impact at the same time.
And in fact, doesn't your organization have something in September planned?
Yes, actually we do.
Plug away.
Yeah, I'll plug it. So we want to put together African professionals with companies that want to hire them. So we're starting with a conversation about a talent summit in September, and then in the spring, we'll actually bring together these companies who can potentially hire these professional Africans that are living in the diaspora. And of course, every year we have our gala. And this year we have an amazing lineup of the AU. We're giving an award to the AU. We're giving an award to one of our own alumni. His name is Dr. Yamkela. We're also giving an award to Mr. Tony Elumelu for his incredible work in business and philanthropy.
Okay, we will be following, and we'll be following the president's trip as well. Thank you so much for giving us a little preview. We're going to take a short break now. Later on tonight in our political rundown, Curtis Sliwa and Herson Barrero give us their review of a dramatic week of decisions by the Supreme Court. Stay with us.